What is up, guys? This is Casual Wrestling Live Hangout, where each and every day we take one of wrestling's biggest topics and break it down and have an open discussion live on YouTube. If you enjoy the channel, please make sure to support the channel through the Casual Wrestling membership on YouTube, starting at just $2.99. The link should now be available in the description of this video. If you don't want to join on a monthly basis, you can support the show through YouTube Super Chats, which guarantee you are heard by the end of the episode. The new format of the show is simple. One topic every day. We take 10 to 15 minutes to give my initial opinions. Then we will jump into the comments and chat to see what you guys think about the topic. If you miss the live stream, the conversation continues in the comment section after the video, to make sure to keep giving your opinions. I will try to respond to as many as possible. It is Thursday, which means we can talk about anything that you guys want to, but the main topic today is going to be Dijak leaving the WWE and kind of the current state of bloated rosters in pro wrestling. First, want to start out saying what's up to the chat. What's up, Denisha? What's up, Brandon? What's up, Wavy D? What's up, T-Squire? I see you guys. I'm going to talk about Dijak for a couple minutes, and we can get into some back and forth. Also have a couple things to talk about that were sent to my inbox this morning that I think will be fun to kind of break down. So the news broke yesterday that Dijak announced his contract with WWE is up on Friday, and there have been no attempts to re-sign him to the company. Dijak claims that despite his attempts to reach out to WWE, that his approaches have been stonewalled by the company, and there is no interest in talking about a new contract. I have the direct quote right here. He says, "Here's the truth. WWE never negotiated with me. We attempted to negotiate, and they stonewalled us. They never made me a single offer. They informed me that they would not renew my contract at the 11th hour. 2 months ago, I was on one of the best matches in NXT history and a top match of WrestleMania weekend. And that day, a top executive in WWE told me I was crushing it. I was slated to feud for the NXT title, but I got called up to Raw instead. I consistently outperformed everyone's expectations, especially throughout 2023 and 2024. I never complained about anything or was difficult to work with. I tirelessly pitched ideas to anyone who would listen, and as recently as the day before I was notified, I never once missed a booking, and I was injured one time in 7 years for 3 months." Now, he did tag Tony Khan in this post. He tagged AEW, TNA, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So Dijak's out here self-promoting, making sure everybody knows that Friday he becomes available to the world. He went on to say, "I'm thankful, I'm disappointed, but I'm also excited. This has lit a fire under me relentlessly to prove myself to the world. All I ever wanted was a fair shot, and now I have the opportunity to go out and take it. That's enough talk. Now it's time to do or Dijak." Cool statement. Here's the thing. I got to touch on this from my perspective. I understand there is a lot of love for this man, a lot of love in the wrestling universe. From both, I see some of my casual friends who have they have opinions about Dijak, and I see the IWC who have very strong opinions on Dijak, but I will touch on this from my very unique casual perspective, and that is, I didn't watch Dijak. I didn't watch Dijak in NXT. I only know Dijak as his run as T-Bar on the main roster, and even then, I know very little about the work he did as T-Bar. Nothing Dijak has ever done has hit me in a way that makes me have the same feelings that a lot of you guys come to me and tell me this is a big loss. I assume, though, that the unique opinion I have is going to mirror closely what the casual audience knows about Dijak. And this is just kind of the reality of why things like this happen. I think the reality is that we talk about this. I talk about the 80%, right? There is the 80% of the casual wrestling audience who doesn't watch NXT on a weekly basis. You can see it by breaking down the numbers, right? You get about 700,000 people watching NXT. You assume that there's a certain amount of those that are unique watchers who only watch NXT. But when you see SmackDown and Raw doing 2 million viewers a week, the gap That's the casual wrestling audience. That's the one that's not seeking out NXT. That's the one that's not going to go to the CW when NXT goes to CW, and they're not going to seek out NXT television. For me, Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown is enough wrestling for the week, and that is what I consider to be the top level of professional wrestling. So I assume that if you're not on the big two, if you're not on Raw or you're not on SmackDown, you're going mostly unnoticed. So when Dijak says things like, I had one of the biggest matches of WrestleMania weekend, I got to be honest, as someone who covers professional wrestling, who reads the dirt sheets, who does have a finger on the pulse, I didn't know that. Like, I wasn't aware that you stole the show WrestleMania weekend. I didn't see anybody talking about that coming out of WrestleMania weekend. We got to be careful when we choose our words, Dijak. We have to be careful, because what I saw people talking about was Roman Reigns. I saw people talking about The Rock. I saw people talking about Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Those were the names that I saw coming out of WrestleMania. Now, while you may have killed it on NXT, we have to be realistic that NXT does not get the same recognition or love that the big two get. And so I get to see these bits and pieces of you guys, like I can see in the chat right now, Doobie saying really heartbroken about Dijak. I get to see that, but I have to be realistic. Like, there is no tangible evidence for me to look at that tells me Dijak is a big loss for the WWE. There are no social media clips being put out that show me, oh, this is why we're losing Dijak, right? I hear people say, oh, he's funny. He's a good social media read. I don't know how much that carries over, once again, to the casual audience. And if you guys haven't picked up yet, Triple H is booking towards a casual audience. He's booking the show towards casual fans. The fact that he's willing to let a guy like Ricochet walk means he's booking toward the casual fans. The reason that the Wyatt Six are so big right now, he's booking towards that 80%, those casual fans who are okay with the supernatural, who are okay with it being a horror film, who are not going to look into the deep, dark details of what's going on week to week, and they're just going to enjoy the product. And I believe that Dijak is a casualty of this is what's going on. So the question becomes, realistically, guys, you have to ask yourself this. If you're WWE, if you're Triple H, and you know you have those hard numbers, you know exactly how many people pay attention to NXT and how many people pay attention to the big two, and you have a 37-year-old wrestler, which in wrestling years is not overly old, but it's not young and spry. And so you have a 37-year-old wrestler who has a ton of potential. That's what I'm told. I'm told he has a ton of potential, but he hasn't gotten over at any point on the main roster. He's gotten over on NXT. That's great. But we know that does not always translate to the main roster. So you have a 37-year-old wrestler with a ton of potential, with not a lot of name recognition, not a lot of value to the casual wrestling audience, but you also have a television show that is littered with high-intensity characters and story arcs going on right now. And you tell me, what do you do with somebody like Dijak? Because unfortunately, right now, on Monday Night Raw, you have the Judgment Day. You have a Damian Priest. You have that guy who fits that same mold. So that guy is on TV right now. You have a Wyatt Six. Like it or not, it is a high-impact, high-intensity story that is dominating the headlines. You have the Intercontinental picture, which is supposed to be your up-and-comers. So you have that covered right now. And on top of that, you're developing a Raw women's division with stories, and you're cultivating talent. And the truth is, here's the reality. Right now, Triple H knows that name recognition is important in professional wrestling. So the question comes down to, and people don't like this, is it Dijak or is it Karrion Kross? And I just have to tell you guys that the reality is more people right now are familiar with who Karrion Kross is than who Dijak is. So some of this is not an indictment against Dijak. Some of this you can equate back. Go blame Vince McMahon for poor booking, for putting Dijak into this situation. But the reality is, for that 80%, for that casual wrestling audience, I don't know that Dijak resonates. And I think this is a problem that we're going to see in pro wrestling in general, right? Here is the issue. As Triple H begins to trim the fat, as he dials back what Vince McMahon was doing. Monday Night Raw, we're not seeing 25 matches a night. Premium live events are not littered with 7 to 9, 2-minute matches. Premium live events, we've hit a formula, guys. It's 5 matches. That doesn't leave a lot of time for this kind of 37-year-old fringe potential talent. That's just reality. Not an indictment against someone like Dijak. It's just the reality of the situation. Triple H knows he's got his cast of characters that are proven, that are going to show up, that are going to sell the tickets, and then he is cultivating the younger talent. That is the Triple H formula right now. So unfortunately for someone like Dijak, where do you fit in? When they start cutting down and they start trimming the roster, it's guys like Dijak that will be the first to go. And this is not strictly a WWE problem. This is an AEW problem as well. That's why the obvious answer that the IWC screams out is Dijak's going to jump over to AEW and he'll prove himself. That's fine. Sure, that's probably going to happen because in the Tony Khan playbook, it's sign the guy that the IWC is screaming about and push out somebody else on the back end of the roster that they won't notice. It's a cycle, guys. WWE drops somebody, AEW runs over to pick them up, and what nobody notices is someone down the line, like a Lance Storm, gets pushed out the back door. That's just the process. But the reality is both companies have these ridiculously bloated rosters. And so the bigger question we have to talk about at some point is, with 5 matches a premium live event and the structure of how Triple H is running Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown, it is time that we come to terms with the fact that some of these IWC darlings, some of these fringe wrestlers, some of these potential guys are going to get cut. And then, so we have to look for an answer to that. And I think the answer is going to be shows like TNA. It's going to be third-party companies. It's not WWE. It's not TNA. These third-party companies have to step up and make legitimate offers to people like Dijak and put them front and center and give them the opportunity to show up or show out. Here's the reality. If Dijak goes to TNA next week and he doesn't move the needle, then we all have to look back at this and go, Triple H made the right call. Now, if Dijak goes to TNA and he moves the needle, guess what? That's great. That is exactly how free agency should work in professional wrestling. You should look. I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm being valued in this company. Let me take my talent somewhere else. Don't let me just jump. If he jumps to AEW, he's basically saying it's just about a paycheck and it's just about being hot for a minute. His best opportunity is in TNA wrestling, where he will get time, he will be able to be a major factor, and he can make a name for himself. I always say the best thing you can do as a guy like Dijak, as a potential guy, is leave amicably. Go to Triple H and go, look, I understand you're not going to re-sign me right now. Let me have this opportunity. Let me free. Let me run out and go do something. And I will prove myself, and then, look, there'll be a bidding war at some point, right? If you go prove yourself in TNA, then that number from AEW and WWE starts to look real pretty. But you have to have a resume. And my problem with Dijak right now is, at 37 years old, for a guy who has been in WWE for 7 years, now, it's not lost on me that some of those years were as T-Bar under Vince McMahon. 100% get that, but the reality is lots of people get bad gimmicks and they get past that. For a 37-year-old who has been in WWE for at least 7 years, there are still a lot of casual fans that have never heard of him. Like, I could go talk to Lauren right now, and Lauren would have no idea who a Dijak is. She wouldn't. She would have zero clue who this man is. And he's been in WWE for 7 years. And if you can't make some sort of just impact on the casual wrestling community in 7 years, I don't know that Triple H sees the same value that the IWC does in someone like a Dijak. It kind of feels like to me that the IWC only speaks up, that a lot of wrestling fans only speak up once it becomes news. I didn't see, now I did see some of you guys in our community speaking up about Dijak, but the wrestling community as a whole, I don't see them on a week-to-week basis talking about, oh, why is Dijak not being pushed? Why is Dijak not on TV? For the most part, guys like him just kind of get forgotten. And that's the issue, is you need to be talked about on a consistent basis in order to really move the needle. So let's see what you guys are talking about here. Nerdy D, look at Top Dollar. He's having TV time every week with... Oh, yeah, no. Top Dollar is a perfect example, right? Top Dollar is a guy who is betting on himself. He went over to TNA. He's getting TV time. He can establish his character. He can get people to see who he is. And then the door opens. And I believe Top Dollar left amicably, where he can walk back into WWE once he's tightened up that character. So, yeah, I think that's a perfect example. Brandon Ruffin coming through with a super chat. Look at Fandango. He took a horrible gimmick and made it memorable. Not just memorable. Fandango took over WWE, Brandon. I went to the WrestleMania. I don't remember what year it was, with Fandango, when I believe it was New York, when we all left singing his song. He was no matter what happened at that event, everybody on the train ride there, in the stadium, leaving the stadium, walking through Times Square, that song was being sang. So you talk about a guy who took a bad gimmick and made it work. Now, I'm not saying that's not the ideal situation, but the reality is in 7 years, you have to figure out how to take shit and make it better. Like that to me, that is a thing. Randall says, Dijak to TNA feels most reasonable. I've been saying WWE sending these older free agents to TNA to take their contracts and they can still potentially use them. I agree. So I agree, Randall. TNA is the most, seems like the best spot for him to go. Maybe it could have been a little more graceful than the way he leaves. I don't know if I'd take that he was taking shots at WWE, but it just always feels like these guys got to kind of put in their 2 cents, like, nobody's looking at me, nobody recognizes me, I put in all this work, I'm pitching ideas. That's great. Just take that same energy and go do it somewhere and prove yourself, and then you get to come back. Look at guys like Cody Rhodes. Look at guys like Drew McIntyre who bet on themselves. They went and bet on themselves, and look at the circumstances they come back to. They control the narrative. You think when Drew McIntyre sits down, like the reality is a couple months ago, we were talking about Drew McIntyre being a free agent. Does anybody really think there was a possibility of WWE letting Drew McIntyre walk out the door? Of course there wasn't. He controls the narrative. They were going to figure it out. It's the same with like a Becky Lynch. You go prove yourself, and you control whatever you want in free agency. Dijak has not earned that yet. And so to me, that's kind of the basis of who he is. Brandon says, only match I remember watching was his match against Keith Lee. Yeah, see, I don't even have a recollection of that match. To be real honest with you, I don't know if I've ever watched a full Dijak match. That's just me being completely honest, is I don't know if I've ever... Okay, so I'm cutting myself off here because I saw this. I keep seeing this. Dijak is the new Steve Blackman. I know Steve Blackman. I have vague memories of Steve Blackman. I don't know if that's a great compare. Like, the comparison's fine. I don't know, though, was Steve Blackman held in that high regards? That's the only thing that I don't remember. You'll have to explain to me that reference. Randall says, as an NXT mark, I don't even remember who Dijak wrestled WrestleMania weekend off the top of my head. That's my point, Randall. That's my point, right? Is, we are relatively informed wrestling fans. I would say that guys like me and We Too Deep, we straddle the line of what it is to be a casual wrestling fan, and we tend to have the knowledge of somebody that gets labeled the IWC. So for us to leave WrestleMania weekend and that information is just not on quick recall, who it was, why it was so important, just kind of lets me know that maybe he's overvaluing what that moment was. And that's not, that's once again not meant to be a dig at Dijak. I just think you have to understand the moment of like when you're on a weekend with The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, the Usos are wrestling each other, Becky Lynch is there. No matter how high you set that bar in NXT, it doesn't even begin to touch what happens on night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania. What's up, Doobie? See you there. Really heartbroken about Dijak. I get it. And the good thing about Dijak is I don't think it's over for somebody like Dijak. I like me and Deep were saying here, it should be a fairly simple transition. In fact, sometimes something like this is good because he is going to get the support of the IWC. There is going to be that kind of anti-WWE groundswell that will push him and give him that initial, like, everybody will probably tune in night 1 wherever Dijak goes. If he goes to AEW, if he goes to TNA, I think he gets a pretty solid groundswell of like internet support. And it's that old thing. Like, you have to show up night 1. Night 1, you have to give everybody a reason to continue watching, because if you come out and you do the same old, like, just shit on WWE shtick, we're all going to turn off the TV. Nobody's going to continue watching if that is what you go with. Lauren's on SmackDown. She doesn't get a choice. Lauren is on Team SmackDown. She's a package deal. It's like we're like drafting the Street Profits. You get Montez and you get Montez and Dawkins. Yeah. Let's see, anything else? Let's go to my inbox. I got a couple interesting messages this morning. Where are they? I have them written down here. Okay, so this is these are messages. I get insane messages on TikTok just from random people who want to, like, I guess, get me stirred up. First thing I got was, how could WWE let Dijak go? It's like McDonald's getting rid of chicken nuggets. I don't like that. I don't like that comparison. I don't think Dijak is the chicken nugget of WWE. To me, I think that Dijak is more like maybe a biscuit. I don't know. Maybe like the weird apple pie. Maybe like he's like the weird, like, limited edition cherry apple pie that shows up. Like, everybody really likes it, but it never seems to stay on the menu. That's what that feels like to me. I got a message that says, I understand letting Ricochet go, but I don't understand letting Dijak go. I go back to, this is, you got to understand the mentality of who's running the company. And right now, Triple H is running the company with the mindset of, we'll give the hardcore IWC, we're going to shorten the amount of bullshit we see on TV. We're going to give you 5 good wrestling matches, but we're going to cater the gimmicks and the backstage stuff to the casual wrestling fan, the 80%. And the 80% doesn't respond to people like Ricochet and Dijak. And I think that there is a world where these guys, they hit a ceiling and they never quite get over the way that you think they should. Like, Ricochet is a guy who seemingly should get over. He has all the intangibles to get over, but I just don't think they look at merchandise sales. They look at booking, they look at segments, and they see the numbers and they go, he probably wants more money than he's worth. And it's the same with Dijak. At 37 years old, a guy who never quite got over, I think that Triple H might have known, like, sitting down at the table with Dijak is going to be insulting. It is not going to be a positive experience, because Dijak is going to see himself worth a certain amount of money, and the number that we're going to slide across the table is not going to be near what Dijak thinks about himself. So maybe we just avoid these negotiations altogether, and we let him leave here with a high level of confidence. To me, that's what I believe. I got a message that says, apparently Triple H is creating cinema only for guys who can't wrestle. This all boils down to the 80%. This is a shot at the Wyatt Six, but once again, the WWE has to have something for everybody, right? And so the comparison I keep making is, I don't think you can take Dijak and compare him to the Wyatt Six. They are not apples to apples comparisons. That is an apple to oranges comparison. I think that the better comparison that you could make right now for someone like Dijak is Damian Priest and it's Karrion Kross. Now, Damian Priest is on a heater. We're not going to have that conversation. I think that Karrion Kross is the argument you can make, but what I would tell you guys is, just by circumstance, Karrion Kross has more TV time with the casual wrestling audience. He also has the built-in Scarlet, which grabs a ton of attention. He's now part of a faction. I just think it makes more sense to invest that main roster time on Karrion Kross. I've seen people say now, well, you could have added him to the Final Testament. I think they butt heads. Sometimes it's not as simple as just taking wrestler A, inserting him into faction A, and it all working out. I think the reality is you have to hitch your wagon to a horse, and I think WWE chooses Karrion Kross 90% of the time. Last thing from the inbox here, this one made me laugh. How do you keep Solo Sikoa on the roster, but you let Dijak go? WWE taking all the L's. Once again, not apples to apples. Solo Sikoa, completely different monster. Solo Sikoa is someone who is being groomed to be a big thing down the road. He's involved in a storyline that is so much bigger, and he's playing a key role, and we're seeing this slow growth of Solo Sikoa. So you can't just put two guys next to each other and start comparing them and go, well, Solo Sikoa, he's not great and he doesn't do this. They are investing into Solo Sikoa because of, you call it nepotism, whatever, his lineage. He is invested in a story that is going to ultimately pay off massively in the next year or two. Whereas Dijak is one of those guys. He's a basic unknown is the problem. To the 80% casual wrestling fans, he's an unknown. So to put him on TV, you now have to invest into explaining who he is, why he's important, why we should care. Because the minute you start putting Dijak on TV, there's a lot of people who go, who is this guy? Who is he? He's tall, he's got a look, but I don't know. And so now you have to invest a ton of television time to get fans to buy into who he is, where, like I said, Karrion Kross, we already understand. We already understand the kind of spooky gimmick. We've already seen him with Rey Mysterio. We've seen him with Drew McIntyre. We've seen him with enough big characters that we're supposed to care about him. So that to me, that's just what it is. Jump back to the chat here. Brandon Ruffin says, if he goes to AEW, he instantly becomes the bodyguard of the Elite. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you mean that seriously or as a joke, but the problem with being as big as Dijak is I don't think the AEW fan base accepts these big guys, because these big guys immediately create the illusion of how small everybody in AEW is. And I'm not going to turn this into, the shit on AEW hour, but the reality is AEW tries to keep a pretty consistent size range of their roster so that nobody looks small. The minute you start putting guys like Dijak in a ring with some of these other guys, you just get this extreme height disadvantage that breaks the illusion of AEW being a wrestling company full of highly big, strong, athletic men, when in reality, it's a bunch of under 5'10" wrestlers who flip around. That's all I've got today, guys. Make sure to join the Casual Wrestling YouTube membership. The link should be in the bio of this video now. I got it all straightened out yesterday. Thank you guys, as always, for taking the time to hang out. Tomorrow is Champ and his Chick Friday. It's not going to go behind the membership for a couple of weeks until we get everything kind of straightened out. Eventually, the Champ and the Chick will be part of the YouTube membership, so the only way to get that show will be behind the membership. But right now, it is still available for everybody, so check us out tomorrow at 1 p.m. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I am Nerdy D. You guys are the Casual Wrestling faction, and we will talk more about pro wrestling